to our program. Our Tiger Timers today.
Live event coverage from RadioSt.Pete.com from the Suncoast Tiger Bay Club, meeting today at the St. Petersburg Yacht Club in St. Petersburg, Florida. Let's go to the podium.
Starting the questions. For a reminder, only members and young Tigers may ask questions, and we're hoping you will. You have 45 seconds to frame your question, no exceptions. You may only ask a single question and no speeches, please. Wait for the microphone and then state your name clearly. Rating the Fang and Claw questions today are several board members in the audience. Janet Long, our Vice President. She's over here. Kelly Kirshner is there. Gary Stempinski, thank you. Wendy Grassi, and Betty Morgenstein. Okay, so ask a good one. We have a tiger waiting here. Okay, and Commissioner Ken Welch is going to do our introduction today. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Gerard. I've got 3 minutes, so before I begin, I just want to take a moment of personal preference to acknowledge the Dean of County Commissioners and my mentor, Bob Stewart, who is here today. Commissioner Stewart. Thank you. Good afternoon, Tigers. It's my honor to introduce our County Administrator, Mark Woodard. Mark is a true public servant who, despite his youthful appearance, has worked for more than 33 years for local government. Mark started his career of public service at an entry-level position in Pinellas County government and has worked his way to the top appointed position in Pinellas. Mark is married to Pam Iorio, former mayor of Tampa and current president of Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, and they have 2 children. In his short tenure, Mark is batting 1,000. He has resolved a long-standing dispute between the county, cities, and fire districts over emergency medical services, or EMS. He is supportive of a living wage for Pinellas County employees and is working on banning the box on employment applications. He's rebuilt relationships with a number of constituencies, including hospitals, mental health care providers, veterans groups, and municipalities. And notably, he has rebuilt the relationship between the County Commission and the County Administrator. And to cement his bona fide do-gooder credentials, and that's Mark's words, not mine, he and his wife Pam have quietly created a $25,000 endowment with USF St. Pete to offer scholarships to students majoring in public administration, giving preference to Pinellas County employees and their families. So, what is not to like? Nothing really. I really have no zingers as I normally would have. He is that good. He's a consummate public servant, and we are blessed to have him as our administrator. However, as Mark comes to us, perhaps he'll tell us if he plans to move from Tampa to the most dynamic and vibrant downtown in the state of Florida in St. Pete. Or perhaps, as he is a problem solver and solved EMS in a number of months, he can tell us how he plans to solve the Rays Stadium issue. I would love to hear Mark's favorite pier design, and perhaps he'll share what he's learned from previous administrators, including Fred Marcus, Steve Spratt, and Bob LaSala. Or as Mark continues to build this culture of doing things in Pinellas County, he'll tell us what the next big thing is for the Mark Woodard administration. Tigers, please join me in welcoming our County Administrator, Mark Woodard. Welcome, bro.
Commissioner Welch, thank you for your kind words. They're deeply appreciated. You know, as I was milling about before the program started in the lobby, many of you mentioned to me that you knew that I was the featured speaker today, and yet you still came. Thank you. You know, I really appreciate this venue too. It's the perfect speaker's venue. You can escape by land or by sea if the speech isn't going well, and slip number 7, red speedboat, mine. I'd also like to thank Tiger Bay and Chandra for the invitation and the opportunity to speak. I also, Chandra, appreciate the fact that you gave me the option of bringing guests. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anyone who was willing to pony up the $35, so I came alone. But seriously, as your county administrator, it's my honor and pleasure to be here with you today. I'd like to recognize the commissioners, Commissioner Seal, Commissioner Gerard and Long, Commissioner Eggers, Commissioner Welch, of course, and Commissioner Justice. I appreciate you coming, and I have to let all of you know that Pinellas County is indeed blessed to have such thoughtful, devoted public servants. So, a little round of applause for our county commission. You know, it's really my pleasure to work with such fine individuals, so thank you. And I'd like to recognize the other elected officials out here today, but in the interest of time and efficiency, I won't, because this is Tiger Bay and it might take too long. So, the years 2009 through 2013 were not a fun time for any of us. Whether you were in government or in business, it was not the best of times. The heady economic growth of the early years of the new millennium stalled and then performed a nosedive. Property values in Pinellas County plunged for 5 consecutive years. A total of 33%, $142 million was lost from the public coffers. County government had massive layoffs. Employees received no increases in pay for 5 years. Today, our staffing levels in Pinellas County government are just slightly below what they were 27 years ago when I started with the county. Budgets were cut by an average of 30%. Some departments, like our Parks Department, took a 50% cut in its budget. Estimated revenues from the penny for Pinellas, which were for the years 2010 through 2020, but forecast during the good times of 2006, have been slashed 25%. No, it wasn't a good time for Pinellas County government, nor for most of our businesses and municipal governments within the county. But it was even worse than that. The amount of garbage coming into our waste-to-energy plant decreased. The consumption of water in Pinellas County decreased. The wastewater being processed at our sewer plants decreased. In fact, for the first time in modern history during the Great Recession, population in this beautiful oasis that we call Pinellas County actually decreased. It was truly the worst of times, a deep, protracted recession with no end in sight. Fortunately, business cycles are just that. They're cycles. They ebb and flow, they go up, they go down, and the recessionary cloud started to part here in Pinellas County in 2013. For the first time in 5 years, we actually saw an increase in property values. They went up about 3%. Last year, they went up about a little bit over 6%. Other economic indicators have improved within the county as well. The trend is positive. You see, these numbers are important to the county, particularly the property values, because 2/3 of our general purpose budget relies upon property taxes. The recovery, though, has been frustratingly slow, and unfortunately, wages have been stagnant. In some parts of our community, and some members of our community have not benefited as a result of some of the improvements that we have seen recently, and that is really to all of our disadvantage. But things have changed for the better, and to survive and prosper, we must adapt to those changing times, just as we did during the economic downturn. So during my time as administrator, I've focused on 3 basic themes, and I'd like to share those with you here this afternoon. The first is optimism for our future. You know, after the Great Recession, everything was negative. The sky was falling. But if we continue to think that the sky is going to fall, if we continue to think the worst, we can never move this organization in this county forward. You can't get out of a ditch by staying in the ditch. So we are focusing on optimism. And as part of optimism is confidence, having confidence. One of the things we did in this year's budget is we cut $1.2 million out in general consulting agreements for leadership and management stuff. Why? Because we have the confidence in our Pinellas County employees to do that work. We have the confidence in them that they can solve our problems, and we don't need high-priced consultants to do that for us. I know one thing. If you treat people, if you treat employees as being competent and capable, and if you demonstrate in them that you have confidence in their abilities, there is little that can not be accomplished. The second theme, as Commissioner Welch indicated, is doing things. You know, we previously spent a lot of time on planning and training and dealing with consultants, and I think we lost sight at some level of why we exist, and that is to do things to serve our customers and the public. We are now all about doing things. I've asked the staff, try to limit your meetings to 1 hour, because previously we would have these meetings that would go on interminably, and as all of you know, once you're in a meeting that goes much beyond an hour, just when you think things are coming in for a landing, you find that things start to go back to where you started, and then you repeat it again. So now 1 hour meetings. You know, to do things though, you have to be accessible to the public, and the public has to know how to access our services. So we've retitled some of our departments. We had a department called Strategic Planning and Initiatives. Okay. Well, it's now called Planning and Development Services. You know why? Because that's what they do. If you're a member of the public and you want to get a building permit or you want to get a zoning application, would you ever in your wildest dreams think that you would look up the Department of Strategic Planning and Initiatives to access those services? No. Department of Environment and Infrastructure. Sounds like some federal bureaucracy, right? It's been retitled to Public Works, Utilities, and Solid Waste. Why? Because that's what they do. We want to name ourselves for what we do so that both the public and our employees can understand the mission and how to access those services. You know, Pinellas County has a secret weapon. It's the 1,876 employees under the county administrator. They have a passion for public service, and any organization is only as good as its employees and workforce. So that is our secret weapon. You see, all that money that we spent on consultants who told us that we needed to change the culture, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do it. Frankly, I don't think they knew what it meant or how to do it, but it sounds good, and you can be paid a lot of money as a consultant for saying you need to change the culture. But what I do know is if you focus on the customer, and if you focus on doing things that serve the public, everything else falls into place. You know, it's really simple. If you unleash the potential of your workforce, if you support them, if you encourage them to do things, they will deliver services of which we will all be proud. So the third theme is, with partners, we can accomplish more. 27 years with the county, we have 24 cities. If we do not have partners, we will accomplish nothing. As we found with the emergency medical services conflict that had been raging on for about 5 years, every day that governments fight each other, every week, every month, every year that they fight, they are not doing what we are here to do and what the public expects of us, which is to serve our customers and to serve the public. I really appreciate the leadership and partnership of Mayor Kreisman in helping to bring that EMS conflict to a resolution and avoiding expensive litigation for all of us. You know, we view as a county government all of you to be partners, city officials, business owners, our customers, the public generally. And I've found that if we engage each of our partners in a respectful way, it makes all the difference. So I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, gee, this county administrator, he sounds like a simpleton. You know, he's talking about these themes. They're all so simplistic. You know, no big revelation here, no fancy words, no rhetorical flourishes. But you know what? Simple is better. We are already seeing positive results in our community by focusing on these three basic themes. You know what? I believe in three things. I believe that there is elegance and power in simplicity. I believe in our vision. We believe in our vision to be the standard for public service in America. And I believe that by pursuing that vision, we will put the progressive back into Pinellas County. Thank you very much. I can't leave? I thought
No,
it was over.
No, you cannot leave. Okay, remember, your questions must be in the form of a question. Please state your name before your question so we know who you are. And you have one, so you pick.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone that we are on the run-up to Valentine's Day, so I have an expectation that you will all be sweet.
Hello, Dr. David Caleb, St. Petersburg. What I want to know is, do you think that you can run a government in your capacity with revenues that do not exceed the growth of inflation and the change in population for the next 10 years? Or do you see the need to increase revenue to the county government beyond the growth of inflation and the change in population?
So one of the processes that we use as part of our financial planning is we develop on an annual basis a 10-year financial forecast. And that forecast is based upon a series of assumptions regarding revenue growth as well as expenditure growth. It's posted on our Pinellas County website under budget, so I'd encourage you to look at it. The question, the response to the question really depends upon the fund that we're looking at. And in public accounting, monies are not all fungible. In other words, I can't take sewer monies and fund a park. I can't take penny for Pinellas money and pay for salaries. So as we look at the various financial forecasts that we have for our 10 key funds, in the transportation area, for example, in order to sustain our projected level of service going forward, there would be a requirement for either a revenue enhancement or for some degradation in the level of service. If we look at emergency medical services, on the other hand, we feel that through the end of this decade, we can continue to meet the needs based upon the forecast within the same millage rate. So there's no one answer to that question, but I will add that we have budget policies that were adopted by the Board of County Commissioners, and one of those policies states that we cannot fund within the budget recurring expenditures that exceed recurring revenues. And so if you maintain that balance, you can avoid the kinds of fiscal impacts that I believe that the questioner was alluding to.
Ted Blank, Terra Verde Community Association. Mr. Woodard, do you support Terra Verde's bid for an independent fire district so they have some control in that process? If not, when will the county provide the overdue fire and EMS personnel and equipment needed to protect our safety and security for the residents of Terra Verde and the over 3 million visitors out of the community each year?
You know, it's very clear to me that public safety is a primary priority for the Board of County Commissioners. I have met with Chief Chief Graham from Wheelman, who provides the fire protection services to the Tierra Verde community, as well as some residents from Tierra Verde, and Senator Brandis, as well as Representative Peters, to discuss this particular matter. I believe that there may be a way, as we move into the fiscal year 16 budget planning process, to address some of the concerns that the Tierra Verde community has put forward. And for the benefit of the group, their primary concern is there is a series of fixed bridges, but there is one drawbridge between the island and the mainland. And one of the concerns is if the fire truck is coming off of the island as part of mutual aid going onto the mainland, and if in the unlikely event something were to happen to the bridge and the span could not come down, there's that concern that the island could be without fire protection. So, you know, it's an issue we're looking at. We think that we can modify the deployment plan to keep the fire engine on the island more, if not all the time. Again, I think there's a way to work with our partners to come to some solution that will address the concerns.
Betty Morgenstein. In the paper today, Commissioner Welch said that it wouldn't be time enough for the next election to do something which was formerly known as green light. Do you have a plan to correct our transportation system in light of that?
Thank you for the question, Betty. You know, again, one of the board's priorities that has come across loud and clear is continued economic vitality within Pinellas County. And I think we all know that transportation is an important part of that. You have to be able to move goods and services and people and visitors in and about the county. The issue of rail and enhanced bus service is, I think, certainly a item that requires further exploration and discussion. I know that the PSTA board has recently engaged in some visioning as to what they believe the path forward might be. The commission has asked the staff to look at other revenue enhancement options to be presented to them at some point in the future. So I think probably the best response to your question, Betty, is it's something that's being looked at and more to come. Yes, sir.
What would be your suggestions for keeping the rates in Pinellas County?
You know, one of the great things about being county administrator is you are only responsible for figuring out the best way to implement the policy direction of the 7-member elected Board of County Commissioners. And I think that that question really gets to the heart of a policy decision. But since you asked about the raise, here's my thinking. They have really deep pitching this season, and I think they could go all the way.
Personal level, or if you were advising the county commissioners individually or to promote state level decisions that will benefit the county, would you be willing to stand up to Governor Scott and say, I want Medicaid in this county because there are hospitals who are going to lose that assistance? Would you be willing to say, you need to talk to the Public Service Commission about Duke Energy's high rates? They are harming the cost of government. You can allocate funds for more vital purposes. That type of thing. On a personal level and talking to your county commission.
Absolutely, in one word. You know, the Board of County Commissioners has a legislative program both at the state as well as the federal level, and that is formally adopted by them in a public meeting. And so that has been done. It just so happens that Medicaid expansion is one of their top priorities, and just this past Tuesday, Commissioner Long brought forward the idea that the board consider the adoption of a resolution to support that. With respect to the electric utilities, I believe within their legislative program, we also have an item related to green energy, renewable energy, and advocating for the adoption of a statewide energy plan and policy. So again, as their county administrator, once that policy decision has been made, I'm responsible for figuring out how to best implement that direction, and if going to Tallahassee or going to Washington would be in furtherance of their policy direction, I would certainly do that.
Hello, Eric Gerard, Largo. 3 of the 5 most economically distressed areas in Pinellas are the unincorporated area. Leonard, High Point, Ridgecrest. Do I have those 3? No? Okay. 3 of the 5 are the most distressed. What are your specific plans to help them economically grow and reduce the distress?
Eric, you just learned a very important lesson. Never speak when your wife is present. I have learned that lesson well, believe me. So, I think that Pinellas County as a community is only as strong as its weakest community. And we do have some communities within the unincorporated area that struggle. High Point and Ridgecrest have long been target areas, as well as Dansville, and have received community development block grant funds from the federal government through the county. Leomin, not so much. And this is something, so I don't want to shock the board members that are here today, but I have staff working as we speak to look at the needs within the Leomin community to see if it would qualify under the statute as a blighted area, and if so, I would then go to the board to see if there would be support to potentially create a community redevelopment area within Leomin and possibly even a tax increment financing district within Leomin. That is a tool that has been used by many of our cities in Pinellas County to put in needed infrastructure, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, address drainage issues, so that those areas, the table can be set for private investment to redevelopment and gentrify those areas. So we're going through a very thoughtful process, and if the results come back to support that, then I would be bringing that recommendation forward to the board.
My name is Ray Neary. I'd just like a clarification from Holmeyer. The reason that you're so successful is that you're tutored by your wife every night.
I'm sorry?
You're tutored by your wife every night.
I just said something else. I almost lost consciousness, Ray. Wow. Well, I will just say that like you and hopefully every man in the audience today, I married above myself. And so that is the key. But she's my partner. We've been married for 27 years. It took me quite a few years to figure out one of the keys to a successful marriage. Do whatever she tells me to do. Now, I was going to also say the other key to a successful marriage is date night. Hers is Tuesday night, mine's Thursday night. That's a joke. That's a joke.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Ann McMullen with Doyle Wealth Management. A question that occurs to me, you're talking about we're no longer in the dark ages of the Great Recession, but the next one's around the corner somewhere. there's going to be another recession, there's going to be another downturn. How are you prepared? How's the county prepared for the next time so that we're well positioned not to have to cut back so horribly on staff and expenditures?
Thank you, Ann. And it's not surprising that Ann always asks the financial and budgetary questions. So, I think we certainly are sensitized to what happened to us running up to the Great Recession. Times were good. The monies were flowing into the public treasury. As my good friend and political mentor, Bob Stewart, has always said, the needs are infinite, but the resources finite. So during that time, the resources were robust, and the board saw needs in the community. The public came forward and said, we have these needs, and then we met them. And of course, when the bottom fell out, some of those new and expanded services were the very first things that had to be cut and scaled back. So what we have done now is we have the financial forecast that I referenced earlier. It looks out 10 years. It's intended to provide a financial blueprint. It's intended to give us information today so that as we make decisions today, we're mindful of the future year impact of those decisions. The other thing that we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we have a board budget policy that we shall not commit to recurring operating and maintenance obligations that exceed our recurring revenues. So I think that too keeps us in the swim lane. And then third, we have also built up our reserve for contingencies, our rainy day funds within our general fund, which is where most of our general purpose government activities are funded, to have 3 months of operating expenses, about 15% of the total. And I think that too, that discipline, which we have in place now and will continue with going forward, will help us in that regard, Ann.
My name is Gary Stepinski, and my question to you is worst case scenario in Pinellas County. We get hit with a 1045. We have 3 months of operating expenses. Where's the revenue going to come from to run the county and to help our citizens and get their lives back?
The one thing that does keep me up at night in this job is every June, with the beginning of hurricane season, what might that look like? And of course, I light candles, and we'll do that again this hurricane season. But, even though I roll over and wake up and think about it, I then immediately fall back to sleep because I know that with this outstanding workforce of public servants we have, they will do, working with our community, what it takes to put things back in order. So the plan, though, with respect to the dollars would be, we have these funds that are accumulated for a rainy day. We have similar balances in other county funds, the water fund, the sewer fund, the solid waste fund, and so forth. So we also know that FEMA will start to reimburse typically 3/4 of any expenditure. So we're hoping that flow of federal funds would start well before the 3-month operating supply were to be exhausted. If we had to, we do have the capability to go to some of our other funds and do a short-term borrowing to maintain the liquidity that we would need in our general fund. So we do have a plan to address that, and we just hope that we never have to execute on that plan.
Hi, my name is Leonard Schmiege. I'd like you to speak to an issue about how much it costs to collect money to raise revenue. And as an example, talk about Fort DeSoto Park. Personally, I don't like, paying $5 to go out there, especially if you're just going to go ride a bike for an hour and then return. But I see that there you have multiple meters for self-pay, and then occasionally we have employees collecting revenue as you drive into the park. And a couple miles before you get to Fort DeSoto, you pass through a toll booth, and somebody there collects, I think, 35 cents. So it makes you wonder, well, why can't that person be collecting the $5 for the park? And so and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but could you speak to, first of all, how much does it cost to collect the revenue, as a percentage of revenue? And what is the worst case scenario, maybe not Port Soda Park, but in other instances around town? Thank you.
Okay, well, let me try to discern the question. With respect to Fort DeSoto, we do impose a $5 fee. That money is used to not only help support the operations of Fort DeSoto, but it's allowed us to accelerate some needed improvements within other parks as part of our overall regional system. The cost of collection is minimal because within the park we use the pay and display. Within the park we do not use pay and display as we do at some other parks. That didn't work at Fort DeSoto because parking is so dispersed and it's such a large geographic area. So we did a financial analysis and found that the best way, the most efficient way to collect the monies there was through a welcome station. The toll that you mentioned previously, that is the Florida Department of Transportation toll. We have had discussions with FDOT as to what would it look like to maybe integrate that toll along with the parking fee at Fort DeSoto. That creates some issues because of a special accommodation that's in place for residents in the Bayway area. That would be a costly thing to implement. However, as the speed pass becomes a more prevalent technology and more motorists have those in their vehicles, that may be an option that we could pursue.
My question is about the City of St. Petersburg Police Department. I live close to the beautiful downtown St. Peter, mile that way, so I'm interested in that public safety issue. The new building that is proposed and seems to be moving along, how did the idea come up with the current funding phase that seems to be moving forward? What role did you play in that? And now that it's progressed as far as it had, how have you been helpful, or were you not involved at all in progressing it to where it is right now?
The request for the county to make a contribution toward the city's police headquarters was something that started probably close to 4 years ago now under then Mayor Foster. And there were negotiations back and forth with the county. Frankly, it didn't go very far. When Mayor Kreisman was elected, he continued those discussions. Frankly, it didn't seem to go very far. When the board appointed me as the interim administrator, I received a call from the mayor, and he asked if we could meet, which of course we did. And the two of us then worked together over the course of the last 7 or 8 months to try to come up with a solution to an existing interlocal agreement that was signed back in 2008 with then Mayor Baker, and craft a solution that better served the city's needs as well as the county needs. So we took this $44.5 million commitment that was signed by the county back in 2008. We agreed that the county would provide a funding contribution to 4 projects, 3 of which were in the original interlocal agreement: Jamestown, which is affordable housing, improvements to Central Avenue, as well as missing sidewalk links within the city. Those are all things that, while they are within the city of St. Petersburg, they align with the policy direction and priorities of the board. The $20.2 million for the police headquarters, the benefit to the overall county there is that is a backup location to our regional 911 center, which is currently, the prime site is on Ulmerton Road. So having another Category 5 building in South County is in the public's interest, and I was intimately involved in those discussions with the mayor.
You said something earlier. If I go to Fort DeSoto, I'm supporting and paying the $5 fee. I'm supporting other parks. Yet when it was sold to us for the fees out there, it was to take care of Fort DeSoto.
The proposal that was put forward by the staff and was ultimately adopted was to meet the needs at Fort DeSoto, but also to meet some other needs as well. Now, I will make this caveat. At the time the fee at Fort DeSoto was adopted, there was also a fee in place at Fred Howard Park in North County, as well as an adjustment at Sand Key. So when I say that about improvements to the overall system, I'm saying it in the context of all of those parking fees system-wide. You're correct. The dollars that are collected at Fort DeSoto stay within Fort DeSoto. The dollars that are collected at the boat ramp at Fort DeSoto stay within the boat ramp area. And then the dollars that are collected for overnight camping at Fort DeSoto, those help support the overall park as well. So if you look at the total of all the fees that are collected at Fort DeSoto, they are still less than the total operating and maintenance costs for that facility. So I think you can rest comfortably that those dollars do stay there. And again, my earlier response was in the context of the overall system and other parking fees that we have in place.
Yes, you have a couple of more duties here. I want to present you with our coveted Tiger Bay mug, carve up a politician for lunch.
Can we change this to carve up an administrator?
No, sorry. Okay. Want to remind everybody that Thursday, March 12th is our Night with the Tigers annual event at the club at Treasure Island. You better register soon or you're going to be out of luck. Okay. And I think we're ready to announce our finding off award. Okay, it's a secret. The winner is Anne McMullen.
You have been listening to live coverage of today's Suncoast Tiger Bay Club luncheon, and luncheon speaker Pinellas County Administrator Mark Woodard that came to you from the St. Petersburg Yacht Club on the bayfront in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. Part of our continuing series of live event coverage on RadioSt.Pete.com, we will bring you the March the 12th Night with the Tigers event from the Treasure Island Yacht Club. Earlier that evening, we'll also be live from the St. Petersburg Museum of History. Mr. Schrader from Little Cooperstown will be the speaker for Happy Hour with the Historian about 7 o'clock, and then about 8 o'clock Eastern Time, we will switch out to the Treasure Island Yacht Club for the Night with the Tigers. A reminder, too, that RadioSt.Pete.com will bring you live play-by-play coverage of the 2015 St. Petersburg International Baseball Series, featuring our friends from Baseball Canada that will be back training here in Pinellas County. They'll be taking on prospect squads from the Major League teams training in the area, as well as the Major League Baseball Toronto Blue Jays.